Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. For those who don't know me, I've written 100 books and many focused on true crime. I've covered the Amanda Knox case, O.J. Simpson, Rebecca Zahau, Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, JonBenet Ramsey, Oscar Pistorius, Chris Watts, Nora Corrin. And what I want to do here is really draw the attention, especially of my American audience, to Sarah Everard, a marketing executive, 33 years old, who was murdered by a 48-year-old police officer called Wayne Couzens. What I'm going to do in this episode, I'm not going to go into the area of why the crime happened. I've got my thoughts on that. I'm going to communicate that in the live that I'm doing tonight. So if you want to hear my theory just based on a cursory examination of the case, I'll be dealing with that during tonight's live. That'll be Sunday at about 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is about, I think it is 6 o'clock UK time and 8 o'clock in South Africa. What I do want to do is introduce you guys to the perpetrator, and I think it's going to surprise you, to his wife from Ukraine. And then in the live, I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think the crime happened. I think I've got a little bit of insight into the thinking here through another series I've been doing simultaneously on the Ripper. And I actually think the protests in the UK right now, the reason why this case has gained so much attention is because of some similar cultural feeling towards the authorities that took place during the reign of terror when the Ripper did his thing in North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. I also think that part of the I don't want to even call it hype, but the massive amount of attention that this particular murder is getting is due to the perception that the authorities are misleading us. The authorities are treating us wrongly. We have been wronged by our governments and our authorities. And so the fact that you've got a law officer of the law committing this crime against someone who's obviously innocent but perceived as innocent as well is resonating widely with the public. It is the sense that we can't trust those who are supposed to take care of us, that are supposed to be honest with us, that are in charge of our safety and protection. And I think that particular perception is accurate. I think all around the world, especially with coronavirus, there is a sense that we can't trust the powers that be. And I think the Sarah Everard case is giving voice to those feelings. There's also a sense that the public are being silenced, that because a vigil was cancelled, there's a sense that women are being silenced. And despite this cancelling of the vigil, a lot of people turned up anyway. And if anything, it's just added to the sense of opprobrium, a sense of that there's censure, that we're being controlled, stifled, limited by the authorities. Now, I do want to deal with the victim in more detail. I do want to deal with the crime in more detail, the details of the crime as well. I will put a couple of links in the description if you want to read up about it, if you're not aware of it. But in this video, I'm going to focus on Wayne Couzens. We're going to get to know the perpetrator. And as I say in the live, I'm going to explain in a bit more detail why I think the crime happened and kind of what's happening. So Wayne Couzens is a British chap. He was 48 years old at the time that he committed the crime. He was born in Dover. I think that's quite important to bear in mind. That is the area that he's familiar with. And so her body was found, or her remains were found in that particular area. And she actually had to be identified by dental records, which I think is telling you something. He is the son of Ray Couzens and the stepson of Corinne Couzens. he has an uncle from Chatham who described him as a fine, upstanding man. He has worked as a, I guess you could say, panel beater. You could also call it a body repair technician, someone who doesn't fix the inside of cars but fixes the outside of them. And he did that in Dover in 1967. Well, the business was established in 1967, but it closed in 2015, I believe. In 2006, so about 15 years ago, he married a Ukrainian woman. Her name is Elena Sukariba. And since getting married to her, he's tried to learn the Ukrainian language, because basically she arrived in the country virtually unable to speak English. So you can get a sense from that this guy seemed to have difficulty finding a partner, and the partner that he did find didn't really know him, and he didn't really know her beyond appearances. Does that make sense? And so his wife, I think he's currently still married to her, is from Kirovigrad, Ukraine. You can look on the map for where that is. In 2008, he became a traffic officer with the Kent Police in Folkestone, and he's lived in a converted property in Folkestone for 3 years. And then at the time, I think that he was staying there, his landlady said something to the effect of, you know, he just qualified as a policeman. He was working in Dover. She thought he was a nice guy. And then what she found strange was when he went over to the Ukraine, seemingly out of the blue, to get his wife. And he brought her back. And when he brought her back, she couldn't speak English, or she couldn't speak much English. And so this surprised his landlady. And what this is showing is someone who doesn't have much social power, I guess, with the opposite sex. You could say that he found his wife, they encountered one another in the real world, but I doubt it. I'm inclined to think that she was a mail order bride and he found her online. That's the impression I get. Then he joined the Civil Nuclear Constabulary in Dover. I think, if this source is correct, he worked for the BBC in Dover in 2011, and then in 2015 him and his wife bought a 3-bedroom house in Freeman's Way in Kent for £200,000. That's according to the Conan Daily site, conandaily.com. So they lived in a house with their 2 children and a dog. And according to their neighbor, that is sort of the situation that they were in at this time. There was another neighbor, John Chidwick, who described him as a nice, well-spoken and friendly guy, right? And so often you hear this. Somebody commits a crime and then everyone says, what a nice guy that person was. What I find a bit odd is these people who say this person was such a nice guy, can't you think of anything that didn't seem to be so nice? You know, because that is going to be helpful to the authorities. So 4 years ago, as recently as 2017, he spent a holiday in the Ukraine. So he took his family to the Ukraine, and 2 years after that, they went to Dubai. And then now we're coming up closer to the present day. In September 2018, he transferred to the Met and became a member of the elite parliamentary and diplomatic protection squad, which I think he was doing at the time that he committed this crime. So it's only really of late that he's ascended to a role of some prominence, if that makes sense. And you sort of wonder, so his career has sort of done quite well recently, but what about his sense of self, kind of in terms of the opposite sex, even though he was married? So he was entitled to carry a firearm, and I think he also had a warrant card, according to conandaily.com. I'll provide a link to that also in the description. And he basically provided what they refer to as static security for major public events. So the impression you get is that he's a spectator, that he sort of patrols the roads and he looks on as everyone else goes about their business. So he's kind of on the periphery looking in and looking at how these well-heeled individuals go about their politics and whatever. So he was 48 years of age, and you're going to see why that is not only relevant but important, when he was arrested at his home in Freeman's Way on March the 9th, 2021. So just about 5 days ago. And what is interesting is his wife Elena was arrested as well on suspicion of being an accessory, being possibly assisting him in the crime. As far as I know, she's been given bail at this point. He has been accused of kidnapping Everard after, and this is I think quite important to bear in mind, how on earth did the police not only find her remains but solve this case as quickly as they did. And if you look at the Ripper, it's something that happened for half a decade and they weren't able to apprehend him. So how on earth were they able to track this guy down so quickly? And the answer is a car linked to him. I don't know whether linked to him means it's his car or his wife's car, but anyway, a car linked to him was apparently spotted on a motorist dash cam near to where she was last seen. So once again, you're getting surveillance footage, whether if it's not CCTV footage, then it is something like a dash cam, and that seems like kind of luck, something that was on the side of you could say Lady Justice, but that luck was basically on the side of law enforcement, I guess, in this case. The other thing is, if you know the UK, if you know London, one of the things that is very interesting about London is you can't really walk very far without coming into the range of CCTV cameras. They are all over. They are perched on buildings. They overlook thoroughfares. They are on the underground. They're all over the place. Outside banks, outside all sorts of buildings. Some homes have them too. But it is something that is very different to my country, where there are only certain areas where you're going to start seeing these things, whereas they're quite ubiquitous in the UK. Of course, there are going to be certain areas where they're not ubiquitous, such as a park, and certain areas where you just wouldn't find, or you'd find less of these cameras. Interestingly, you've got a last photo of Sarah Everard when she was fairly close to her destination. So Sarah Everard disappeared on March 3rd, and he was apprehended on March the 9th. And then on March 10th, detectives carried out a search of his locker at the police base at the Palace of Westminster and searched his home in Freeman's Way, and I think they confiscated a black seat Exia worth £20,000. And on the same day, Everard was found dead in Ashford, Kent. So he was arrested before her remains were actually found. So I'm not going to take it further than that. I will be providing more detail on his wife, on Elena, in the next episode. And the episode after that, we'll be dealing with the victim and the crime itself. Don't miss the live this evening, where I'll be talking about why I think this crime happened. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time.